Today, we'll be speaking with Andrew Wilgar. He's the Vice President of Sales at Bonfire, one of the fastest growing government tech companies. And this is a story of someone who's a master of leveraging his network, from car sales to recruiting, and a story of how one thing really does lead to another. You're really going to enjoy this one. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Seller's Journey, the podcast where we speak to great sales reps and leaders and share their real stories from start to sales success.
Hey, how's it going, Andrew? Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. I'm doing well. Excited to chat this morning for sure.
I'm so excited to be sharing your journey too. I know we've known each other for a while, and I just know the great work that you're doing at fantastic tech companies. But sharing the details of how you got into tech, this is going to be so much fun.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's pretty funny to think about it, going all the way back, but some really interesting connections that led to where I am today. So I've been really fortunate along the way. So happy to chat about it.
Awesome. So thinking a little bit about the start of the story, let's give people an idea of the destination. What is Bonfire's elevator pitch? What are you guys doing? What's the impact? Why should people be so excited about the company?
Yeah. So we work in the procurement space, and in today's world, for a lot of government agencies, running a request for proposal or an RFP is an extremely manual process, very time-consuming, paper-based, heavy-handed kind of stuff. And so we saw an opportunity to change that, and we believe by helping a government agency take that archaic RFP process or procurement process online, we could help them out. So that's what Bonfire set out to do. And today we have close to 400 agencies across North America using Bonfire to run a much more efficient procurement process, which in today's world is especially important as we deal with the crisis. We enable them to buy things more quickly, in particular, health, medical, all that sort of stuff. So it's a dark space that people don't often have a lot of familiarity with, but it's a very important space. And we saw this really cool opportunity to help government improve it. So we take an old process and we take it online, make it a whole lot better.
This is awesome. And you're just growing like crazy. We see all the press about the fundraisers, the hiring, the growth. And I know this isn't your first tech role, but I'd like to kind of roll the clock back. We talked a little bit about how people got into tech. You shared with me a really entertaining story about how you got your first sales job. So can we start with that one? Can you share a little bit about how you got started?
Yeah, it's a funny one that starts on just kind of a normal Saturday afternoon. I think I was 19. I was with my dad. He was car shopping, and we were at Waterloo Nissan. And I was with him, and I just happened to be talking with the sales rep who was helping us, and he sort of said, "Hey, you know a lot about these cars, and why don't you should apply, because we need some more help." Also, it also kind of helped. My dad knew the owner of the dealership at the time, and so I did, and I got this job as a car salesman. So sort of a go for car salesman kind of role, but I had no idea at the time that it was going to turn into anything from there, but it kind of did.
The pressing question, though, did the sales rep close the deal? Did your dad buy the car from him?
He did. Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
And I still remember the guy's name was Mark. I'm always curious about where he is today. He was a super nice guy, sort of my age. And anyway, he was the one that proposed it. So I kind of owe him a thanks, really.
Well, there we go. Well, we'll have to find him and flip him this podcast episode.
That's right.
So you can hear the journey.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're selling cars and you're in school at this time, right?
Yeah, I was at Laurier at the time. Yep.
And what were you studying? Was it relevant to car sales?
Not at all. No. And I think if there's something I would share with people out there about my journey, and I'm always really open about this, I was never a great academic. It's never been my strong suit. I always liked kind of entrepreneurial ventures, and I don't know, there's something about school, and I never vibed all that well. But I was at Laurier. I was actually studying geography and then kind of doing some business course stuff on the side. But that was my major at the time. which is kind of funny. I never really did a whole lot with that, but it was something I just enjoyed. So that's where I was. Yeah.
Well, there you go. So we actually get a lot of people who have a background in automotive sales, and they'd like to break into tech. And so I think a lot are going to be very interested about your journey. Now, you didn't start right into tech. It's not like you went from car sales to VP sales at Bonfire. You shared earlier a fantastic story about how you got into your next role, and I think it was Jim. Was it that helped you out? Can you share a bit about what happened there?
Yeah, for sure. Jim Fairfax at Kitchener Executive Consultants. I get this phone call from this guy randomly. I posted my resume on monster.ca, and I get this call one day from a guy who says, hey, Andrew James, been at Wilgar, and uses my full four-name official name. Like, who is this? And it turned out to be Jim Fairfax, and he ran Kitchener Executive Consultants, which is a recruiting firm in town.
Oh, okay.
And Jim said, hey, we find a lot of people from the auto industry have a lot of success in our industry in terms of the selling side of it. And I didn't really know a lot about recruiting, nothing about it, except it sounded interesting. Like, well, I get to hire or help hire people. This sounds pretty cool. I'm only 21. That sounds like a real leap. And so I went in, and Jim's is just like really big personality, great guy to learn from, was really supportive. There were a bunch of guys in that office that taught me a lot. And what they taught me was, I would go in and really like map out organizations. I was doing a ton of cold calling and learning how to, ask questions, navigate past gatekeepers, a whole lot of stuff like that, which at the time it was 21 and it was a job. And all I wanted to do was figure out like how to get to the next weekend kind of thing. But I was getting all the skill that I it became extremely valuable down the road. So Jim gave me this opportunity, and I worked with him for a little while in summers while I was at Laurier, all that sort of stuff. It was great. So that was kind of the next stepping stone, was Jim Fairfax.
So there we go. We go from automotive to recruiting. You're picking up kind of cold calling. You're still at school. Now, the interesting part of it, though, is here in Waterloo, there's two universities, Laurier, which you mentioned, and Waterloo, which is kind of more recognized for its engineering and technical side. You ended up working with a tech company here in town, and that's a kind of pivotal shift. We get a lot of questions about that. How to get into tech. Could you speak a little bit about just how you got acquainted with that group? How did you get in? How did you get your foot in the door?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was fortunate in one respect that I had a family friend who was consulting at the University of Waterloo, and he was doing some work with Communitech and a number of small startups. And I think it's actually, now that I think it was in the MBET program. Anyway, he's good friends with my dad, and it was just happened to be one of those things where I was telling him what I was doing. He said, hey, you should meet the guys at Spark Matrix. It's one of the companies I'm helping. Mm-hmm. David, Lee, and James, these, two guys that had this software for landlords. Kind of one of those things I didn't know a lot about. I knew I wanted to get into tech, though. I even then, tech was really heating up. The BlackBerry was huge at that time. So I had that side of it for sure. But there's also this just willingness, I think. I was meeting with a lot of people. So I always had this entrepreneurial side. I was meeting with lots of folks. I was always wanted to take a coffee, or I always wanted to meet with, it's funny. I always think about I want to meet my dad's friends. My dad, you sort of meet their network, get to know their network. I met a whole lot of people along the way to help out. So I did focus, and I recall this very clearly, focus on getting myself out there. And this one just happened to be close to home. And Lou Kupasarian, who's still a good family friend of ours, introduced me to Dave and James at Spark Matrix. And that got me into tech. I met with them. They needed some help cold calling and reaching out to landlords and getting their product out there. And that's kind of the starting point. And then it was kind of cool because Spark Matrix got into the accelerator program at the Accelerator Center on Hagee Boulevard. Mm-hmm. We met Maya Vision and Curtis and Tony and Kevin and those guys there and Kevin Hood, and that really got, sort of, that was a launching pad. And, obviously that's what it was supposed to be, but it really was the network I met there. And of course the biggest one that has influenced my life is meeting Corey Flatt back in those days. That was 2005.
So that idea of leveraging and kind of getting into the network, I want to come back to that. So I'm going to kind of put that one to the side, and we'll spend some time on that. But you mentioned two separate things that I don't want to let you lose. So number one, you spoke about your father's network, getting to know my father's friends. When we last spoke, you mentioned about how your father and brother were great at sales. Could you share a little bit about that? How did that impact you? Because I think that's an important part of your story too.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Well, my brother's almost 10 years older than I am. And, he's always been extremely entrepreneurial. And so, yeah, you grow up looking up to your big brother for sure. And I even leveraged his network a fair amount, actually, in different endeavors and in funny kind of ways. Everything from lawyers to buddies of his, that kind of thing. But and my dad was my dad had amazing work ethic, or has amazing work ethic, and he was always willing to share. He was part of Rotary in town. That was a big thing, actually. I had his Rotary book and contacts. Like, I remember meeting Mike Alcure, who's like the owner of Victoria Star Motors, and just, I don't know, just different names of these guys, business owners in town that I sort of admired, and I would reach out to them. In my brewing days, I got to meet John Sleeman, Jim Brickman, and I would call these guys up and just ask for a meeting. So I met some really. I tried really hard to meet people that I admired, I knew had amazing work ethic or stories, that kind of thing. So that was really it, just leveraging that.
Just to quickly help our audience, because our audience is spread all across North America. You dropped a couple of names there, Sleeman, Brickman. Who are these people? Why are these big names?
Jim Brickman, Brick Brewing here in Waterloo, now Waterloo Brewing, but he was kind of the pioneer of like the craft beer space back in the early 80s. And then same with John Sleeman Brewing, sold it to Sapporo. I spent some time in the brewing industry and was looking for some help and guidance, and both those guys were willing to chat with me.
Okay, I love the audacity of it. It's just like, hey, let's call up these, titans of beer. This is great.
yeah, for sure. And I was fortunate to have a couple of people that were like, hey, I know Jim. I'll support. I'll kind of support you in that, or I'll nudge Jim to take your call, kind of thing. So
nice.
I had that, but that also stemmed just from calling up the phone and talking to those guys. So it all sort of snowballs, I suppose.
So there's kind of like that hidden story in there about being willing to put yourself out there, but also kind of wrapping around that contact to kind of fill in the buyer there. There's a lot there about the buying circle. There's so much good stuff here. Okay, you mentioned your father and your brother, but another thing that you mentioned was you hopped onto that call with David Lee, and they said, that's exactly what we need, and they brought you on board. Now that's a really small comment. You were selling cars and recruiting, and the founder of a tech company said, that's exactly what we need. How did that conversation go? What were you offering that grabbed their attention?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. And for anybody trying to get into tech sales, this is a moment where you have to put your ego aside. And what I was offering was cold calling. And fast forward to today, it's BDR, SDR work, right? It's willing to grind it out on the phone. And that's, Dave and James are both brilliant guys, engineer guys, but they didn't want to spend their day, calling up the local landlords, or landlords across Canada or whatever. And I was happy to do that. And I was, I sort of said, look, in my job today, I make 75 to 100 calls. People tell me, you get rejected all day, whatever. You just kind of roll with it. And I'm comfortable to do that. If you guys want me to make some calls for you, where's the phone? I'm ready to go. Like, that's not a problem. And so that was really, it was just a simple offer just to hit the phones for them and try and get some results. And we did. I got them in front of some of the biggest, you go down Ezra Street in Waterloo here. It's all student houses. I think the guy that did all that, his name was, I think it was also Mark. But I chased that guy forever, and then he finally took a meeting with us. Shrembry, a building in town, all those guys. We met with all of them just from sheer I'm not going to stop calling you until you meet with me.
That's great tenacity.
So that was it. That was really it. It was a pretty simple offer. I'll hit the phones for you hard.
Wow. Okay. So that's a very simple value prop. I love it. We talked about how you got into tech, but leveraging the network still, cold calling for a small startup, there's a big gap between that and where you are now. When we last spoke, you talked about how the network introduced you to the founders at Myovision, where you were next, but then also got you in touch with Corey Flatt from Bonfire, where you are now.
Yeah.
Okay, these are intertwined. How does this happen?
Yeah, and oh man, I'm so thankful it did. So at Spark Matrix, we were redoing our website. David and Corey must have known each other somehow. But Corey came on to redo our website, and I got to know we got along really well. And
okay, I think, wait, can I double check that? This is the CEO of Bonfire. I assume must be before Bonfire was.
But this is 2005. Yeah, Bonfire was 2012. So this is 7-8 years before Bonfire. And Corey's in business at Laurier, but Corey's this self-taught, he coding guru too.
That's so good.
Corey will listen to this maybe, and I'm helping his ego, but it's all good. But yeah, so Corey had also just gotten back from Bolivia, and it just so happened that my wife and I, my girlfriend at the time, we were going to Bolivia in a few months and to do some volunteer work. And so Corey and I grabbed lunch, and we were talking about Bolivia, and obviously also talking about entrepreneurial stuff and what he was up to. And actually, it's funny. I remember at that time thinking this guy's very smart. Corey is brilliant, and we stayed in touch because when I got back from Bolivia, Corey was now at Myovision. And Corey, I remember going out for lunch with him again. He's like, "You should come to Myovision." He tried to hire me there, but that's when I pivoted. I went into the brewing world, which was a good idea and a bad idea at the same time. But that's perhaps another story. But anyway, that's how I met Corey Flatt. We met at the Spark Matrix days, and that whole crew, Myovision, and basically everybody up at the Accelerator Center back at that time.
And that's so good. So we have covered so many bases, and I know I promised that we wouldn't keep you too long. I have just a couple of more questions before we wrap up, if that's okay.
No worries. Yeah, absolutely.
First off, I love this story. I mean, you've dropped some fantastic insights. The power of cold calling, leveraging your network. One of the key things that I heard here is, make sure you build good relationships with everyone, because you never know, your web designer might be your CEO.
So yeah, that's right.
This is great.
Don't burn bridges.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
If you're looking back at your journey, you've done so much that's right, and you've had so many successes. But if you were looking back at your journey over the last decade or more, what advice would you give a younger Andrew Wilgar?
Well, I talked a little bit about the academic side of things before. Mm-hmm. I would probably, I wish I had gone further with that side. So, you can go a long way with selling. But I today, as I, look at what we're doing and some of the stuff we're involved in, I wish I had more technical aptitude for sure. So that's one side of it. I always think, man, I probably, if I just spent a couple hours a day in the books, I probably would have had that much more. But I was always just kind of tinkering with ideas, I suppose, or kind of daydreaming a little bit too much about big ideas. So that's probably a big thing. The school side of it, and giving a good foundation there. And I think the other one I was thinking about is, I always saw myself as an entrepreneur, but you didn't really embrace the sales thing until Really until almost up to Myovision. I was doing all this sales stuff and I was happy to do it and I enjoyed it.
Mhm.
But it was always kind of like, yeah, but it's sales. Ugh. But I wish I'd just kind of embraced it as, because when I got to Myovision, that was an amazing experience too, in terms of working with, as an AE, amazing group of people, Ryan McCartney and Andrew Moore and Roman, like all these guys I met there that were really, really good sales guys. And that's where I really embraced, like, wow, sales is full on, and embrace it. And then I realized, even further, that when you start hiring, we started raising money and started pitching and all that stuff. It's like, this is all sales. It's all sales. And then I got into the point of like, why aren't they teaching this more? Like, why isn't sales it's a bigger thing going forward? That's something I'd like to be a part of, is how do we make sales a bigger part of the curriculum than it is? Because at the end of the day, sales is business is sales. So anyway, that's a whole other story, but yeah, that's probably, looking back, some of the things I would focus on.
Well, sharing your story like this with people who aspire to get into sales is a great step in helping kind of normalize it, bring it into schools, and so you're making a big contribution now doing this.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, you mentioned Laurier and Waterloo in town here. It'd be cool to see them do some stuff. Obviously, Communitech's really helped out a lot. But yeah, it really is. It's an amazing career. It gets you just all kinds of cool experiences and travel. So yeah, like I said before, I feel very fortunate to have sort of fallen into a little bit, but also knowing it's the path I wanted to take.
That's awesome. Okay, I mentioned I'd be able to let you go. I've got a couple rapid fire questions, and then we can wrap up and let you get back into selling.
Yeah, sure. No rush. No rush.
Okay, so you have had such a great selling career. I get cars to cold calling to gov tech and everything between. What's been your favorite sales tool?
Favorite sales tool? I mean, other than the phone?
There you go. Your story fits that. Gotta take that.
The phone is very important. It drives me crazy when people, rely on like email drip campaigns and stuff. It's like, just pick up the phone and call them. Get the answer faster. Favorite tool? Geez. I mean, if softwares and stuff, I'm a big fan of Gong, and I really like what they're doing recently. It's a great tool. Is that kind of what you mean, Joseph? I've never even really thought about my tools.
I think the phone was the strongest answer right there, so I'm going to take that one and put that one onto the list.
Yeah, phone for sure. Get a good phone. That's the key. Yeah.
Outside of the office, though, so shifting gears more personally, what's your favorite movie?
My favorite. I've got a lot of them. I suppose if I had to pick one movie, I'm kind of stereotypical. I love Scarface. I'm a big Scarface fan.
Nice.
Big Al Pacino fan. Yeah.
This is good. This is the first Scarface reference we've had. I've asked this question a lot.
Really?
But yeah, Scarface is a good one.
Oh, Scarface, great movie.
There we go. Okay, last one. You've shared a lot about your journey. You've done a lot of things, but when you were a kid, when you think back to your kind of earliest goals, what did you want to grow up to be?
An entrepreneur. Nice. It sounds really. Again, this kind of goes back to my brother a little bit, right? But the first toy, I have this really clear memory of this shopping with my mom, going past Grandin Toy. I think it was in like Westmount Plaza back in the late 80s. And they had a plastic briefcase, and I was just like, that is the greatest thing ever. I want that plastic briefcase. I want to be a businessman. That is sweet. And it was blue, and I think I ended up getting it, and I filled it with cars or whatever. But it was a briefcase, and I always wanted to be a business person. So, and I was, yeah, I sort of romanticized about the entrepreneurial side of it, startups and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I guess I've been lucky in the sense that I don't always have the idea, but I've been able to plug in at really early stages with brilliant people. I mean, David Lee's an example, Curtis McBride an example, certainly Corey Flatt and Alex, founders of Bonfire. So get in early and work extremely hard to help them grow their businesses, but also sort of own the idea as if it were my own as well, which in Bonfire's case, it's, the four of us at Bonfire really sort of feel like a founder, because we were there kind of working away for the first few years to get it going. So yeah, it's been an awesome ride for sure.
This has been such a great conversation. Andrew, thank you so much for sharing and opening up about your journey. This was incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to share it. It's fun to talk about. You don't really kind of dig back into that very often, but when I start thinking about, wow, yeah, there are a lot of really funny connections here. I haven't thought about them in years, but yeah, I mean, we've got such a cool community in town here in Waterloo, and fortunate to have spent time in the Valley with Bonfire. So it's been a cool journey. But for anybody getting into sales, leverage the network. My other piece of advice to people on a resume, I gave the example before of, here's what I can offer, here's what I can do for Spark Matrix, and that was really game changer. I read so many resumes where it's like, I want this, I want that, I want this. Here's what I want. Make your resume about what you're going to do for the business. Here's what I offer. Here's how I can kill it for you, the company. Simple little tweak but when I read that as a hiring manager, I'm like, yeah, immediately in. I want somebody that's thinking about how they're going to help the business, not just themselves. Although that's important, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Andrew, this has been fantastic. I'm so looking forward to getting this episode up. I think it's going to be an inspiration for tons. But thank you again for sharing the time.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Joseph. It's great to chat, and I'm looking forward to hearing it as well. So thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. We'll chat soon. Hope you guys stay safe and happy selling.
Same to you. All the best. We'll chat soon.
Chat soon.
Cheers.